So I'm Jay Rogers. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Local Motors. Local Motors is a new vehicle innovation company. We're out of Phoenix, Arizona right now, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about our story and what we got going for. So here's what we do. We manage this crowd of people. We call them our community. They're made up of designers, engineers, fabricators, and enthusiasts. We are focused on the automotive world, and specifically on the specialty automotive world. So I started this business when I was a Marine in Iraq. I had two friends of mine were killed in 2004, and I decided I was going to build a car company. And what I was going to do is build a company that would advance the cause of automotive technology as fast as possible. So I was pissed off and tired about the fact that we had big automotive companies around the world, and that the governments that regulated them, they worked against each other to be able to allow innovation to happen quickly. And so the idea was to try to pierce that veil of regulation and big capital intensity, and at the small end of things, do things that were amazing. So the basic function of Local Motors at the time that I started the business was to create a crowd, get them to come together on projects that they previously thought were impossible or too difficult for them to do, and then build beside them a micro-manufacturing capability, which was to say a place that would put these things to real to begin with, just as they were trying. That's simple. A crowd, some micro-manufacturing facilities, and we do amazing things together. What we wanted to do was show that nothing was too hard. So we wanted to make a vehicle first and have that crowd design it and have the micro-manufacturing facility build it. And then we wanted to turn that back over to the customers and say, you come in and you build your own car. So make it completely open source. Our company is nothing if not an example of what can happen in the open source revolution when you turn the IP back over to the people who created it and the people who use it. And as a business, we make money by selling the widget. And we insist to our community that we'll never stop innovating the product. So it's not about stealing today's technology, because if we're already innovating on the thing that we do next, we're worried more about the ability to adapt our machinery and adapt what we make to be able to bring the new product out. And it kind of exhausts the person who would like to copy, because they're always copying the last thing that we did. That's sort of the theory of how we went about it. And that's what we've done. Local Motors, the portal to the future of manufacturing. We're one of them. We're not the only one. But I think that the important thing to recognize here is we went after a car first, because the car is the single biggest mark in the sand to say that you can put a complex device together. This is the Rally Fighter, some examples of it. We've put 60 of them on the road, and they're all built by customers. These are our customers that have come in, and they put that whole thing together. We've ratcheted it down. It started, the first customer came in, it took them almost 6 weeks in the factory to build. That is a huge amount of time. Nobody has 6 weeks, unless they're not working anymore, to come and do that. Now our customers come in and they spend 2 weekends with us. The team that's in it right now, a retired Army colonel and his son and his brother and his friend, 4 guys, they are now basically body on, car together, roller on the ground in 2.5 days. And now they'll work on refinements, making the car beautiful, getting it ready for wrap, testing and everything else, and by the end of the second weekend they'll be ready to roll. So just 2 weekends with us and they're building a car. And that has taken the community so far in believing what was possible for us. And all of that data is available online. This is a former Navy petty officer that came and built his car. He's crashed it once, came back, it's been rebuilt, and then he's back out again, hopefully not going to crash it a second time. This is what the microfactory looks like for us. It's a small 20,000 square foot facility with humans in it. And it has a small amount of equipment in it, and that equipment we really pick by its ability to go from prototype to production. And production for us means units of 100 to 1,000, not 10,000 and more. So we like machines like water jets versus things like laser cutters, because a water jet is within an affordability price point, and we can build one thing on it or we can cut 100 things on it. Whereas laser cutters, you can cut things that are 0.40 thickness maybe, but when you want to start to get above 1/4 inch thickness, the cost point of the machine is just so big that it's impossible to make it work. So we pick our machinery carefully. We're about 50 people large now. I've learned that when the community designs something, they're still in the process of changing things a lot when the thing is first made, especially when it becomes physical for the first time. So like our lower control arms in this car, we changed geometry, we changed design, so we were on sort of draft 1 that had 10 revisions, and then we were on draft 2 that had 19 revisions. We didn't really want to send it out to suppliers until we were on like revision 18 of draft 2, because you exhaust your suppliers when you do that. So that's why we keep our prototyping equipment in-house, so that we can get ready to send it out. And right now, most of the Rally Fighter is done out of house. About the only thing we build in-house still is just the chassis. Glass is done out of house. Control arms in many cases are done out of house. All our tube cutting is done out of house, tube bending. Wire harnesses are now done out of house. We prototyped all that in-house. Molding of components is done out of house. Headlight integration, other things like that. But it all started in our factory. One of the things that's also interesting, and might be interesting for you, Wency, is that we run the largest vehicle wrap program for full vehicles that I know that exists. We wrap vehicles intensely all the time. We're using every single product that 3M makes and more, and get them out as quick as we can. And our customers love it, because they can come in with an idea, our community can turn it, they can design it, and then we can do all the plotter cutting. We have a network of printers that are working on making sort of the most environmentally sensitive inks that are out there, making them UV resistant, those sorts of things, working with the materials both from 3M, Avery Dennison, and some of the other makers that are out there, Oracal, those sorts of things, and basically just constantly trying out new stuff. And it's incredible how we've wrapped these vehicles. I mean, they shine. There's one outside right now that you can see that's done with carbon fiber on the outside. And so we've taken paint out of the equation. Straight from there, straight to wrap. And we're looking at doing things more like trying to take lights and being able to add accents on areas that are not reflective surfaces and other things like that to change shape and those sorts of things. Things that people like 3M have talked about for a long time in product development, but most OEMs aren't willing to do because it's just not part of their program. So we'd like to push that along. 5 times faster than an average vehicle program would. And it came to life with 100 times less capital. We put $3 million into the Rally Fighter. $3 million. And we've made 60 of them so far. In another 20 cars, we'll break even on that car. That's amazing as far as I'm concerned, because it starts that what we started for, which is we can make it, this innovations on the Rally Fighter, which the one outside was, we wanted to make it 40% lighter than any car in class. We wanted to take paint out of the equation and do full wraps of the vehicle and have it be more exciting for the customer rather than less. And we wanted to make it so that it was fully open source. So you could look at it and that we could order parts when the customer ordered the car, as opposed to the reverse, have cars sitting on lots and waiting. So those were the innovations that we wanted. We've achieved those with this car. And we put $3 million into the car. So if we sell 80 of them, we could stop. We're not gonna, because we want to keep making it available to the customers. But we've said we will build no more than 2,000 Rally Fighters. But long before we get to 2,000, we'll be working on our next vehicle that the community will design, and it will be owned by the community and all the data, and we'll make the parts and sell the cars. So this was my granddad back in 1943 when he bought the Indian Motorcycle Company. And I think one of the things that I learned from this time from him, and I knew him very well, was Laconia was a great place to go at the time. This is a picture that's in Laconia. Has anybody ever been to Laconia here? Been to Bike Week when it's going on? Okay. Have you been to Bike Week? So it used to be, grandmother could go, my father could go, his brothers could go, and it was great. Barrel racing, fires at night, stories, all that kind of stuff. Not so much like that anymore. And so I think that our hobbies have changed. We think our hobbies change a little bit based on what's available for people to work on. So there were a lot of lessons that my granddad took from this. One of them was that you don't have a lot of feedback in 1943 from your customers. So the ability to be able to get feedback from customers was impossible for him. He took over an old factory from the US government, Rolls-Royce factory that became the Wigwam. He sunk money into 2 big projects, both of which ended up being failures. One was to make the new Chief, and the other one was to make the square cylinder engine. And he ended up going out of business in the mid-50s. That was something that I really wanted to avoid. And I didn't think that, the story of car companies needed to be the Bricklands, the DeLoreans, the Crosleys, those sorts of things, because they just all end up falling on the rocks. And even in today, we had a mass explosion of value in 2008 where GM went out of business or almost went bankrupt, definitely. We had Ford that just got lucky by selling assets early. And then we had Chrysler, which is sort of, had a sale to another company and which is also in trouble. And so we saw an explosion and a destruction of value. But it created a creativity that went out. But the thing that I think the real lesson to learn of in this time is that at that time, we saw the founding of some innovative car companies. Coda Automotive came out, Aptera Automotive came out, V Vehicles came out at that time, Better Place Automotive came out, Fisker came out, Tesla came out, and there were a list of car companies that came out. All but 2 of those are out of business now, and one of those 2 looks like it's about to go out of business. So that doesn't mean that the lesson is just because the big company has stumbles that it makes room for a new company to come in. It's more about a process innovation. Like if you're spending billions of dollars to make millions of cars, you're just doing business the way that the last person did. And I think from America, it's possible to be the place that a new automotive process develops. There've really only been two automotive process revolutions in history. One of them was Henry Ford, we all know it, and maybe you could say that Maybach, Daimler, and Benz at the same time were part of that. 1907, 1909, 1912. And that was Edward Deming, we're going to put the line in, it's going to be mass production, and there's no more craft building of coaches. That was an innovation. And scientific management came into that. The second innovation was really Alfred Sloan, when he came in and said, you know what, forget this, you can have a car any color you want as long as it's black. I want a middle-class car, I want an upper-class car, I want a working man's car, and I'm going to divide the industry. And Harley Earl came in and he did concepts for that, and they tested things out, and that really changed the industry. I would say that Sakichi Toyota just refined that. The Toyota production in lean was something that's really built off of Ford and GM, and said, I'm just going to do it better. So all of the great things that came out of it, like Genchi Kumbutsu and any of the things that came out, were incredible refinements, but they were just making better the process from what was there. And since then, we haven't had a refinement in the automotive industry. We haven't had a disruption. The disruption is sitting in your hands. It really is sitting in your hands as a specialty automotive equipment industry. Because there's so much innovation, and everywhere I go around the world and I look at big companies, the people who work for big automotive OEMs are people who themselves had a dream about a product that they wanted to make or something that they wanted to do. And the truth is that with the internet and with the lowering cost of tools and the lowering cost of testing equipment, it just is a foregone conclusion that it is going to be easier rather than harder to make products. But if we listen to the way in which we regulate, that is certainly something that's going the other direction. I'm going to make regulation a lot harder for you to get through, so even though you could make a product easier, today you could make a great LED headlight. But regulation has gotten so tight on headlights that they make it harder for you to do. And that's the trick in the business. How do you make that work? And we could talk more about how Local Motors has done that. So we follow this prescription for everybody who comes in. Create it, develop it, build it, mod it, and do it again. It's a cycle. Hate this notion of like the designer sits over here, and the engineer sits over here, and the fabricator sits over here, and the customer sits someplace else. So we try to bring them all together over projects, and it happens physically at our microfactory. It happens physically around our cars. Virtually, they get together at this place called the Forge, and so the Forge is really where we talk about projects that are going on. But physically, it really does happen around our cars. They drive around. There's 60 of them in the country and a few overseas, and they all leave with a stack of 500 business cards that say, I built this car with my son or daughter or grandson, and those 500 cards are gone in less than 20 days because you just pull up at a stop sign and people are like, what is that car? Where'd you buy it? And they say, I built it myself. Conversation begins. And that, I think, is the soul of the resurgence of automotive, because you can still attach yourself to the creation of a car. Things we've done is we've gone to some of the largest enterprise software companies and said, can you please make your high-grade software available to innovators? So you'll see more and more of this at Local Motors. You can buy Solid Edge for $19.95 a month. You get 30 days free if you come. This software is $3,000 to $5,000 depending upon what deal you can get with your VAR, and it's $1,000 annual maintenance. You can get it for 19 bucks a month. You'll be able to get better software too coming up from Autodesk, and not better than this necessarily, slightly different, but still of the same quality. OEM grade software, no change, it's the same software. The only difference is that they recognize that there's a market for hobbyist innovators, whereas if you're a large company, you're still going to pay the rack rate at the enterprise software amount. So some changes going on there, and if you work for a large company and you're thinking you might want to leave and start your own business, things like this make it more possible. If you go to rallyfighter.com, which is the dedicated site we have to the car that's outside, you can download every single piece of CAD and build instructions associated with the car, in addition to the parts list and all of the suppliers. I'm just going to repeat that. You can download all of the parts of the car, all of the build instructions, all of the lists where they come from and the suppliers and the price that you pay for them. We don't hide anything about the creation of the car. And I think that's part of the reason is we change it all the time. And so if you wanted the latest one, you're more likely to come to us because you get to come and make it anyway with us. This is not a 2-year build. It's not a 2,000 man-hour build. It is a 2-week evolution. And this is sort of what we talk about. We do things faster, and we do things with less expense, and we do it because we bring more brain power to the table. That's sort of the strategic structure of our business. Faster, less expensive, more brain power. Not going to spend a lot more time on it because we could just, that's what it is. We brought the Rally Fighter to market in 18 months, first 25 cars on the road. Other companies have taken 2,600 days to get 25 cars on the road, and then those were recalled. We've put $3 million into the Rally Fighter. Tesla and Fisker, which we put up here, have now each put in excess of $1 billion into that. And we're not talking about other cars. Those were just two examples I pulled up. We could talk about those. We've put over 30,000 people to work in our community on any project that we're working on. That is contrasted to an in-house engineering team of usually less than 10 that's working on one vehicle project at a time. So that makes a big difference. It's not an OEM car, but it is the future of what I think R&D and development in vehicles could be. Domino's pizza delivery vehicle right now, the ultimate delivery machine. Domino's came to us because they couldn't get any OEM to answer their questions. They were like, we need a pizza delivery vehicle that's fitting for the operational intensity that we have of making pizzas. They have cheesy bites, or they have cheesy bread and parm bites that are getting crushed in the way that they put it down. They don't know when they get in the car whether they're going to be able to fit in or they have to walk around to the outside, so their tip is at peril when they're coming in. And the people that are pizza delivery folks, if anybody's ever driven before, they don't make a lot of money. And so giving them a vehicle, it allows them to do their business with more pride and the ability to be more efficient so you don't drive back to the store because you got the wrong order, is all things that they wanted to get from this vehicle. Peterbilt has come to us. Shell's worked on 5 future fuel vehicles with our community. Between second largest bike company in the world, working on a hybrid trike for the Milan market. We made a vehicle for the US military that went to Afghanistan. And this is me giving it over to the president. And it was an amazing experience because it took us 4 months. And we did it for $800,000, including the tooling. And it was a rapid resupply and recovery vehicle for the Kausbul region of Afghanistan. I was a Marine for 7 years in the infantry. We need development like this. I ran a sniper team of 30 people, and there was never a piece of equipment that was good enough for what we needed to do. Not our weapons, not our armor, and not our vehicles that we drove around in. Thank him for his service. And so this is what we need. I'm proud to announce that we've just started a partnership with the US Army that's going to do it. So they have been putting forward deployed fab labs right now in Afghanistan and Iraq for the last 5 years, but they haven't figured out how to connect those to a community of people that could actually help people in the field get answers quickly. I mean, this is kind of like a truck driver, if you will. If you're hauling a load from Oklahoma to the port in LA and back, you don't have time to stop and figure out how to make your widget work better. But if you had time to sit down and talk to somebody when you're on a rest stop with an idea about what you could do and they could be fabricating it, that works. Same thing for a Marine or a soldier that's coming out of the field. They've been on an op, they're bone tired, but they have an opportunity to know that you could answer the challenge. Like, why did the stretcher not fit in the back of the Humvee? Or why does this thing constantly rub me in the neck when I'm patrolling or carrying it around? Or why is this thing so damn heavy for me to have? Especially if the unit that just left the field and is now back in Virginia or back in California or something else like that, that was right in your footsteps, if they could help you develop it while they're back in the rear smoking and joking and eating burgers and whatnot, there's a real connection there that needs to be developed. The internet makes that possible, rapid prototyping makes that possible, and sharing of information in storage facilities in the cloud makes that possible. So that's something that I really think is amazing as this development has gone on. We're only 6 years into it. So that was building that DARPA vehicle. Doing a shoe for driving for Reebok. They really wanted to do something where if you were driving your car in the off-road and you wanted to get out and you had to run 5 miles to make it to the next station to tell somebody that you broke down and there was no radio communication, they wanted a shoe that would work for that. Because there were pilotis for driving on tracks, but there was nothing that could actually get from the car 5 miles. An esoteric thing, built for low volume, built for our community. And lots of other projects. This is another one, Edison 2, which was our community working on building a door handle for the winner of the Automotive X Prize. And I like this example because the Automotive X Prize was a prize-based innovation collaboration. It said, here's $10 million to the person who can win a race across the country at 100 miles per gallon. And that's a great form of innovation. But the problem with that innovation, and there are a lot of good things, is the winner, nobody wanted to buy the car. Now that's a problem. Because you can win $10 million, but then you have no market. And so it just meant that they needed more development. They needed to know whether people wanted. They developed it in secret. They didn't develop it in the public. And I think one of the things we've learned at Local Motors is that if you develop a product with your public watching, you come out with something that, not surprisingly, is something that they wanted. Or you know that you're doing something against their wishes. When you develop something in prize-based innovation that's private, and no one can see, you may win the prize and you may lose the war because nobody wants to buy your car. Pretty simple design, designed by one of our community members, and cost them almost nothing to be able to get something that maintained their coefficient of drag and allowed them to be able to open and close the door and push that vehicle around a little more. Maybe adding a door handle might make you want to buy that vehicle a little bit more. I think in the end, if you apply that whole concept to the vehicle, you might have ended up with something that was more fit for the market. I went and actually drove the vehicle so I could really see what was going on, and I think that that's one of those things that once you really get in the product and you see, you realize why it wasn't something that went to market. There were so many things about it that wouldn't have been pleasing to a customer. So, this is our company. Made by you in America is our motto while we're here. Local Motors, though, is meant to have micro-manufacturing facilities in every country around the world. So it's made by you in Ukraine, made by you in Canada, made by you in Mexico. Concepted in the US, built by an innovative society that understands how to make this happen, but basically working with a global community of people who have automotive innovation ideas. And so it's about sharing the IP and selling the heavy atoms. I leave this slide up, by the way, because it's hard to be in this industry. There's 17 reasons every day when I come to work where there's a reason why we shouldn't be in business, from somebody that thinks we're doing something wrong. You have to cowboy up if you're going to get out there and do it. I guarantee it's the hardest industry I've ever been in. I've done 3 startups before, and this is by far the hardest. It's fun, but it is really hard. It's satisfying when you get to drive or see your product around and that kind of thing. Whether it's a widget on a vehicle or something else like that, it's super satisfying. The day we wrapped our first car in 3M material and it didn't all peel off, and it wasn't even our product, you know what I mean? But it was something that we figured out how to put on. That was an amazing moment. The day we wrapped our 60th car and it was still working, that was awesome. So it's a global community. I've talked about that. The phrase we use a lot too is that atoms are the new bits. In the last 10 years, last 20 years, Silicon Valley has really accelerated on the idea of funding companies that are really working in bits. What's changed so much in the last 5 years is that atoms have become a lot more cool to work with. Who here's been to a maker fair? Nobody. So you need to go to a maker fair. It was started in San Mateo by Tim O'Reilly and Dale Doherty. Make Magazine is what they publish. They now have over almost 200,000 people in San Mateo Fairground that go every year. There's one in Detroit, there's one in Manhattan, or it's in the New York State Fairgrounds, and then they have little ones like TEDx's all over the country. They are a little fair where you can come together and see the most incredible stuff, from chemistry to automotive to robotics to software to knitting to food. Yep. Atoms are the new bits. Things like maker fairs are leading the way to be able to make that happen, so go check one out. I think this is something that comes out of it. Did anybody follow Jim Cameron when he went down to the bottom of the trench? I mean, he tweeted from the bottom of the trench, 9,000 kilometers away from a lot of people. 30,000 tweets in the first 8 hours about it and 26,000 followers. And guaranteed there are young people in there. Like, he was inspired when he learned about the Titanic. He went and found the Titanic, and then he made a movie about it, and then he went to the bottom of the trench. Doing this has created, guaranteed, some young people who are going to do amazing things like he did, because he shared it the moment he did it. That's real collaboration. So pretty amazing to learn about, and I think the maker effect is resonant in this. Bill Joy founded Sun Microsystems, and he was doing an interview back 15 years ago, and he said this in the interview, and it's now been repeated so many times. No matter who you are, most of the smartest people work for somebody else. And all he was seeing is that he had been at Sun and he had all these super smart people, but the thing is that they would go tackle something slightly different, and he found that the people who might have been able to solve that problem didn't actually work in his team. So that was a realization to say that crowdsourcing can work if you can make it on someone else's terms. If you say, I'm going to steal your idea, those are not good terms. But if you say, I want to pay you for your idea, or you say, I want to give you status for your idea, changes the terms. If I say, I'll give you back the product for free, if you make it, changes the terms. And Bill Joy sort of started that as it came about. So I'm going to sort of finish on this notion, and I think that to me it's the one that rings true the most. The British came through their Industrial Revolution, the steam engine and the internal combustion engine driven spinning jenny, in 100 years, a little less than 100 years. The Americans came through in 50 years. You know the story of that legacy. The Chinese have done it in less than 10. And what I started thinking about is, does that mean that there's another country that's going to do it in 1 year? And I think more what's happening because of the change in tools is it'll stop being countries that come through in a shorter period of time, but it will be the fact that you have a country here, a country here, a country here, and now maybe it'll be an individual. So individuals connected by lower cost machines and the ability to be able to do things themselves in their own garage or with their small business. They can hire a designer, they can work with low-cost CAD, they can get a fabricator to do something for them, whether it's in mechatronics or whether it's in a blow-molded thing, roto-molded, cast die, zinc. They shouldn't expect to put out 1 million products, but they can put out products at a scale which would allow them to be able to pay the bills. That's a real change. Can't happen in every industry, but more and more it's happening in more industries. So the limitation is what's up here. Today at Local Motors we employ I don't know how many people that have visas from other countries. And we don't do it because we don't like Americans. We do it because they came to our community and they said, I love cars and I want to be part of this revolution. It makes our world it makes it more borderless. And that's something to remember is you can share information through the touch of an email, and if not the smartest person in the world that you need to work on something doesn't work with you, you need to be able to look outside. I'm a patriot. I definitely fought for this country, and I would give my life for this country, but I would like to see it succeed based on what the strengths are in it to do things. If you share the IP and sell the heavy atoms, the dollars are going to happen where you make it. You can bring people together to be part of that from anywhere to make it happen.